Alright, time for another draft physics video presentation. So, a good finder of links found a link. Not perfect, so, more analysis will have to be done to it, I suppose. Maybe it has all of the pieces, and maybe if you just, zoom into it or do something, maybe I can find enough evidence for a proof. But regardless, visually you get the indication. So, the argument is that this elastic band is stretched, and objects of different weights are put on there. And the argument is the same momentum pushes on one side that pushes on the other, and you really can't change that dynamic. And so it's always the same momentum on both sides of the elastic. Both one object will be moving this way with the same momentum as the object moving this way. And that means, because you're changing the mass, that means you'll change the velocity of an object, but you can never change what each object is getting in terms of its half of the momentum. So what's going to happen here is one side's going to get higher and higher. They're just wooden blocks moving across a slickish surface. So the bad news is it's not clinical in the sense that the heavier object is going to create a lot more friction because of gravity, and so it's going to mess it up a little. But you can see visually it basically says yes. Just look at the one on the right is, the one on the left. It's going to move the same speed each time. That would be the argument I'm making. So it's getting, the right one's heavier and heavier. The left one's moving the same speed each time. Nothing to see here. Okay, so that's basically it. All right, so we'll just play that again. And like I said, I did download the video with the hope that maybe I can fiddle with it if I have to. If this is the best we get, then, it's the best we get. So same speed, collision in the middle. Different speeds, collision more towards the left one because it's the one getting heavier and heavier. Now, unfortunately, the scale on the ruler, you just can't see it well enough to. I tried to go frame by frame, but you don't really get very good numbers. But they do. It seems to be fairly consistent. The number of frames it takes to cover the distance is the same. So it's just a piece, getting closer. Now, if they just did this experiment actually clinically, then we'd have these answers. And, I found another Quora question asking essentially the same thing I asked, and all the answers are, well, maybe I'll go to that just for the fun of it. So I'll take a pause and just to show that none of the answers have anything to do with what the person is looking for in the question, and they're just all evasions of the question. And it's really annoying. All right, back. All right, so this is the question. If a mass of 10 kilograms, I asked if, a stick of butter, 100 newtons, 100 grams, is dropped from a height of 10 meters, I said 1 meter, because that would be a joule, on a weighing scale, what weight would the weighing scale measure? And all four answers are pretending he's not asking what the weight is after it hits the scale after falling 10 meters. And their answer is it weighs the same. It weighs 99 newtons, which isn't any help. It weighs exactly 10 kilograms. So, I mean, they just essentially just said it weighs 10 kilograms. Just completely ignoring the question of, no, after it falls 10 meters, not how much it weighs, like after it fell and then you wait an hour and then look at the scale. No, you look at the scale when it hits. How much is it initially? How much is the impulse, the collision, weigh? Clearly that's what the person's asking, clearly completely evaded. I don't know, they don't put a date on the question. I think the answers have a date. December 3rd, 2018. So all four answers are the same stupid, moronic answer. So they go to the trouble to do this bullshit, and they end up giving the guy the same answer. And this guy doesn't actually give him the answer, but same bullshit formulation. And then this guy says, I have to do more. So all this calculating to say 97 to 99 newtons. I mean, obviously it should be 100 newtons, frankly, but I guess the technically 107 or 102 grams is a newton. I mean, some stupid thing like that. I mean, the way they've screwed up everything in physics is just amazing that they can't even create standards that aren't. Why is a newton 100 grams? Why do that? Well, anyway, so this one, 98 newtons. So he's basically telling you how much 10 kilograms weighs 98 newtons. Thanks a lot. So no answers. Just, And then this one says, depends on the weighing machine, I guess. So, yeah, that's really helpful. So, I mean, this was back in April of 2017. I guess that's, answered April 9th, 2017. So this is the best the answers can, this is what the best they can come up with as an answer to a simple question. How much does something weigh after it falls 10 meters? That shouldn't challenge physics. They really should be able to answer the question. Huh? I mean, sorry, but that's just pathetic. All right. So moving on to something else. Alright, evil. Jerry Hall sent this crap. I didn't read the first couple of sentences. Oh, this is just too stupid again. So we'll go through it. What the hell? You asked what it is if not energy. Yes. Momentum doesn't have any meaning if you don't understand it to be meaningful, like energy. Like it has some significance in the universe. It really can't mean anything as any other concept than a word representing energy. I might use the board. Needs to be erased. Anyway, it's basically motion. And motion isn't energy. Is that your argument? I mean, we know that energy is motion. Energy is something hitting something else, and that causes it to move, and that's how we measure energy. That's what heat is, that's what sound, all kinds of things. All this motion is all made out of energy. Anything moving in the universe is potentially energetic if it's going to hit something. Period. So how did you make a distinction between kinetic energy and momentum by using this mush? Anyway, when you have a cluster of particles moving the same way, you can call it the quantity of motion. So what? Yeah, exactly. But that's the whole point. It all has to be moving the same way, or we're not going to be recognizing it as energy. If it's going every way. I suppose the sun is sending its energy in every direction, and we're getting a portion of it in one direction. So but that this isn't making any distinction. You're not separating kinetic from momentum and explaining how they can be possibly two different definitions for this same quantity of quantity of motion. Isn't that exactly what kinetic energy is saying? It's the quantity of motion. What else is it saying? Okay. As a way to visualize momentum is to think of each atom as a vector. So again, now you're lost in this nonsense that somehow kinetic energy isn't a vector, when of course it is, which represents the velocity. Yeah, duh. I mean, how many times? I'm kind of famous for drawing arrows, retard. I mean, Jerry, you haven't seen me, Jerry, draw arrows all over the fucking place all the fucking time? So who are you writing this response to? I mean, it's obviously not to me. Alright, which represents the velocity. The momentum is the sum of the vectors. Says you. Okay, let's put it that way. Obviously, the vector has a direction and it has a length, you could argue. So, yeah, so where did I say anything inconsistent with that? That's exactly what momentum is. Momentum is the sum of the vectors. What else is there? There's the direction you're going and how faster you're going in that direction with an element of mass. And the more masses, obviously that's more vectors to have to deal with. If somebody shoots one bullet, it's just one bullet. Somebody shoots two bullets, obviously that's twice as much to have to deal with. It's not 4 times as much, it's twice as much. Come on. All right, the momentum is the sum of the vectors. You can't change the total momentum without an external force. That doesn't even mean anything in this conversation. Obviously, we're talking about things interacting. So, obviously there's going to be external forces. There's going to be new forces added. Some action is going to take place. You can't have an action if something doesn't change. Duh. All right, which requires energy. It requires something to change. It requires movement. Everything requires movement. There's no, if I freeze the universe right now, I just freeze every little subatomic particle, freeze it. Everything just stops. Then clearly nothing has energy anymore. There's no energy in the universe. Nothing's moving. No vectors. It's all stopped. Zero. Zero, the length of the line is zero. Zero velocity. Nothing's happening. It's exactly what momentum says. You haven't made, like I said, you're not making any explanation for why we need mv squared. What is it revealing about energy? You are arguing that somehow there's a disproportional relationship between mass and velocity. Somehow it's more important how fast something's going, and it's not important how heavy it is. When clearly it is very important how heavy it is. It's just as important. That's what all the evidence indicates. All right, total momentum without external force, which requires energy. In a vacuum, an object doesn't need energy to move. So what is this shit? You're making, you're projecting, statements that you can't even confirm, absolutely anyway. In the sense that you've got this idiotic notion, your physics has an idiotic notion that the vacuum is popping particles out of it every now and then. I mean, you don't even know the vacuum is nothing. Stupid fuck. Anyway, an object doesn't need energy to move. Whatever. Obviously, the energy is in the objects, I would argue. It's in the electrons and it's in the photons. It's in the particles that are moving. So clearly that's my argument. So again, who the fuck are you typing this to? How could it possibly be relevant to any arguments I've made? Oh, that's right, it can't be. Only to accelerate or slow down. I mean, did you copy it somewhere off of something and you're just sending me this crap that you read somewhere? All right. In the vacuum, an object doesn't need energy to move. Only to accelerate or slow down. So, I mean, obviously I'm arguing you can't accelerate a photon, you can't slow a photon down, the bits of energy in it. You can scatter them and make them travel longer distances, but you can't slow them down. So, this argument, again, is so moot in with all the premises you're already well aware of. These assertions are challengeable. So, fuck you. Anyway, heat in a vacuum is electromagnetic radiation. So, I mean, the only way it can transfer in a vacuum is through electromagnetic radiation. Everything's producing electromagnetic radiation that's hot. Okay, they're creating photons. So you don't need a vacuum to be creating photons. You're leaking them right now. Infrared radiation is coming off of you right now. You don't have to be in a vacuum to do it. But you have added ways to lose your heat. That is, the atmosphere will bang atoms into you, and those atoms will become more energetic based on your temperature. So that's the second way you can lose your heat. So this, you're not doing anything to clear up the truth here. You're just muddying the water. All right. Heat in a vacuum is electromagnetic radiation. No, heat is heat. Heat is the movement of your elemental bits, and through that movement, they create photons as the byproduct. And depending on how hot you are, you can create X-rays. You can create all kinds of different photons based on how fast your atoms are moving. And in the process of having those collisions, they're going to have they can either accelerate each other or decelerate each other. Okay, heat in a vacuum, mostly infrared. Kinetic energy can radiate and leave the system, but the momentum is the same. So that is just preposterous shit. Now you have zero evidence for that ever happening in the history of mankind. kinetic energy can radiate and leave a system, but the momentum is the same. Impossible. Heat is like friction. You can't have it and keep your momentum. Not possible. So that statement, you'll never prove that with a single experiment ever conducted in the history of mankind. Absolute nonsense. As I've pointed out, I mean, let me clean the board. And I've explained this in the previous video, and it's kind of miraculous to me that the video has just 6 thumbs up. And in the sense, just because it was such a great explanation of how the system works. And, you're just sitting here saying, God, everybody is just so stupid. They're really not getting that, this really does work. Okay, this explanation is so much better than the crap they teach in physics classes. I mean, momentum is essentially, when you're transferring momentum, you're transferring the integrity of a direction. Okay, and you'll always say that you conserve the momentum, that is, you transferred it successfully, when you keep it going in the same direction. And if you don't do that, okay, and you create heat, that means that's energy going in the wrong direction, or sound, or deformation. That's energy going in the wrong direction, and it costs you this arrow's length, okay, your momentum vector, okay, to use your rhetoric, okay, the amplitude of your momentum, your velocity, because you're not giving away mass. Of course, if you broke off pieces, you'd understand that has to come out of your momentum too. But anyway, I have to just think about that for a second, right? Because it depends on how you ejected the mass. So I don't want to say that without, being careful. So never mind that statement. But anyway, the point is you can't create this arrow. You can't create this arrow without diminishing this arrow. Okay, this arrow, it has to come out of this one. It has to come out of your momentum. This direction has to come out of your momentum, has to cause this. Your momentum has to cause that. Your momentum has to cause that. Now, if your momentum causes this, well, the advantage is clearly this is going to pave the road up here for you. And that's why things with velocity tend to penetrate. It's because they tend not to do this direction as much. Okay, they escape the friction and the blight of slow things. Being slow means these things have more time to hit you, okay, and steal your energy. So the faster you go into most things means the more energy you're going to end up losing to the environment. The faster you go, the less energy you're going to lose to the environment. And this is true for even gravity. Rolling things in gravity means heavy things are going to get hurt more than light things. But anyway, so theoretically, you can just argue that each time you do a transfer, you lose some energy to heat and sound, and so you're losing a little bit to each transfer. So obviously there's only so many transfers you could go through, but if we could make it a perfect world and we could take away the little bits of losses, then we could just basically push energy forever. Okay, we could keep momentum going and going and going. I could hit one pin, it hits another pin, hits another pin, hits another pin. I can knock down zillions of pins with just one pin's worth of energy. I can just take, 1 joule of energy, and I could theoretically knock down 1 billion pins if I wasn't losing a little bit of the momentum on each interaction. So, yes, everything dies. The energy dies as heat. That's where all the energy, the things we call energy, which is creating velocity and mass vectors, MV vectors, momentum vectors. When we create momentum, the fact is that in the process of attempting to transfer it, you're often going to have these circumstances where you lose it in other directions, and so the arrow will get shorter and shorter and shorter, and you'll run out of momentum. So momentum often dies as heat and friction and deformation and anything going some other direction. And it's that simple. So yes, it's always, momentum is heat. Okay, and it's just heat is a form of momentum, and it's the one that is the most in every direction, and therefore not really perceived as energy, even though clearly it is. All right, that's enough. All right, in a vacuum, it doesn't require energy to keep you moving. Once you have your speed, you will go on forever unless someone makes an effort to stop you. Yes, and theoretically, we know that the universe might be doing that right now to photons. They could be hitting atoms on their journey, and those atoms are stealing some of their energy in the sense of stealing some of their frequency, reducing it, and that's why there's redshift. Not implausible at all as an explanation. So, it's this unless you hit something thing doesn't mean much when we don't really exist in a universe that's a perfect vacuum. Okay, it doesn't matter how much heat that radiates and disappears. Oh, yes it does. So you'll never prove that one. You'll never show an experiment where you can just create continuous amounts of heat and it doesn't cost any energy. You didn't have to move anything to do it. You didn't have to create momentum to do it. So some of this relates to Joule. Joule was a guy who just experimented. He was a beer maker, all right, and so he was dealing with temperature and fermentation and all that kind of stuff. So he got interested in this subject. I think he got interested because he wanted to go from steam engines to electric motors to run his machinery, and he wanted to figure out which one was more efficient. Which one would cost him the most in the long run. And so he did all these experiments about temperature and heat and thermal things. And, there's nothing wrong with his experiments, but they've perverted Joule into something that would be something else. I mean, the simple calculation is that water, when you move it, you agitate it. What are you doing? If you put a slosher inside the water, it's a water wheel, something to move the water. A little, what's the word for that? But anyway, what are you doing? You're doing exactly what I'm talking about. You're sending water in all kinds of directions. It's, circular is all directions. So if you start spinning water or agitating water, you're creating energy, momentum in all kinds of different directions, which has to end up as heat, right? All of that momentum is then going to be, the other water molecules are going to stick. It's going to start going in all kinds of directions. So it's basically just creating heat. So he just showed that there was a clear relationship between the work you put in and the heat you get out. So what's the surprise? I don't even know why that would be at all remarkable as a discovery. It should be obvious to everybody. Of course the energy goes somewhere. Obviously you're not doing any work because you're not getting, work in the way we would call it work. I mean, running your wheelbarrow forward and then going back 3 feet and then going forward 3 feet, somebody might call that work, but most people will call that stupid. Okay, because it's not going to accomplish anything. So obviously it's work, but it's only work in a technical sense because you're really just turning the energy into nothing. And the nothing in this case is heat. You're just creating a bunch of heat. So it all turns into heat. Theoretically, because we don't live in a perfect universe where things don't end up going the wrong way. Anyway, all right. It doesn't matter how much heat it radiates and disappears. So that just can't make any sense. It always matters. The heat comes out of your momentum. It's work. Now, before there's heat, you move the water. I mean, obviously the paddle wheel is causing the water to have momentum in a direction. But again, that direction is defeated by the next water's direction and the next water's direction and the next water's direction. So the momentum is only coherent, for the very shortest period of time before it's all just turned into a bunch of stuff canceling each other out, so to speak. But there is no canceling out, so it's all reflecting. And that's the heat. Heat is stuff bouncing off other stuff. You put more atoms into the same thing and it gets hotter. You take atoms out, of the same movement and it gets colder. Swarms of asteroids can collide and lose kinetic energy. So this is just more nonsense. So now he switched it from, he's talking about momentum, now he's talking about stuff losing kinetic energy. You can only lose in terms of the transfers become less and less efficient. So of course you could say, well, light laser beams can be scattered and lose effectiveness as a laser beam. You know, obviously if you're breaking asteroids and scattering asteroids, then you're losing their energy in a certain direction. But they really haven't lost any total energy. You know, it doesn't disappears. There's no disappears anywhere. Okay, anyway. Energy and, let's see, asteroids collide and lose kinetic energy to heat, but their total momentum remains the same. No, it doesn't. Their total momentum, that is, you know, their threat to the universe in a direction, has to be diminished if they're making heat. So if they're creating heat, that's momentum that's been lost. You can't have it both ways. You can't still be a threat as a bullet if I've made the bullet hot. If I force the bullet to do something that creates heat, then the bullet won't have as much energy when it gets to you. So if it has to heat some toast, you know, or you know, bake some bacon or something, the bullet's not going to have the same momentum when it gets to you. So it's just a nonsense to sell any idea that there's any energy you can make heat without losing momentum. There's no example of it ever in the history of mankind. Losing kinetic energy is not like running out of juice. Yeah, there's only energy. Okay, so again, now you're just changing the words again. Energy in the first half was momentum. Now energy is some sort of kinetic energy. This is the game they constantly play. The description of the reality is one kind of mechanical universe. Again, you're trying to play this duality game that somehow momentum is valuable or meaningful and kinetic energy is valuable and meaningful. They both can't be. The controversy didn't start that way. There's no way the people in the controversy ever thought both were right. I don't know how any idiot, I mean, obviously the historians are playing that game, like somehow it's over semantics. There's no semantics here. This is an overtly different formula calculating the same thing, the quality of motion. This is a replacement for the quantity of motion, whatever you want to call it, quantity, quality. It's a replacement, clearly. So why do you keep arguing as if there's any compatibility between these two things? It makes absolutely zero sense. Its motion is its energy. If it's an electron moving, if it's moving at a certain velocity and has a certain mass, it has a certain momentum, and that's it. That's all it has. It doesn't have anything else. Anyway, it cannot, you know, because it's going, I cut it in half and I make it go faster, it can't burn more toast. Losing kinetic energy is not like running out of juice. Well, yeah, it is. It can be lost, but you still have to add the same amount to break the speed. So whatever that could even mean. The opposing force has to be just as strong, even though it already pushed something back there. So even the car crashes. The car's going 60 miles an hour. It crashes into another car, sends it flying off at 30 miles an hour, and the car still has the same energy. Absolute bullshit. Yeah, there's nothing. It's just absolute bullshit. So I don't know how you think this advances anything. You're just dogmatically making these proclamations for which you have zero experimental evidence of this ever taking place. Of you both doing work, but losing. See, I mean, it's one thing to say, I did the job of manipulating something, and it got hot. Well, of course, that's the energy dying. But I already manipulated it. That's how it got hot. I shook it. So yeah, I did the work of shaking it. All right, so I still had my momentum when I'm doing the shaking. But now the shaking can't do any new work. It's not a battery. I didn't put energy into it by shaking it. I just made it hot. So now it has heat. But it doesn't have energy in the sense it doesn't have heat in one direction. It's not going to create a laser beam. It's not going to do work in the universe now. It's just going to heat the universe, which is work, but it's not going to do coherent push-a-wheelbarrow work. So, you know, it's all about when you say this event takes place of doing, and it's about doing both. In the train example, okay, I mean, fuck, you really do believe this somehow? You really are this frickin' stupid that you think if I drop a weight on a train, it's moving 5 miles an hour, I double its mass. Well, it's moving 10 miles an hour. I double its mass. Now it's moving 5 miles an hour. You're saying that that train, okay, still has the same momentum. You're conceding it still has the same ability to move things in the universe, yet it lost half of its energy, whatever that is. And it lost it to heat and deformation, but you'll never show me the heat, and you'll never show me the deformation, which are colossal amounts, actually. I mean, by their theory, you use these heavy objects going relatively fast. You're talking about, kilojoules worth of energy, and there's no evidence of it. So, I mean, how can you be this stupid? How can you keep defending something that just can't be defended? If there was heat and deformation in the kilojoule range, it would be visible. Why isn't it visible? Clearly didn't lose any energy, because you transferred, you changed the momentum, the state of the momentum, the velocity and the mass. You doubled the mass, and the velocity halved, and you still have the same energy. And we would concede that even if I'm using little carts and an air track, I'm going to lose a tiny bit of energy to the fact that when I drop the weight, when the weight falls that tiny little distance onto the platform, that there might be some extra friction and wobbling and bouncing that might steal some energy. But it'll be a tiny percentage of the total energy in the experiment. I mean, I just don't know how you can defend something that just so is obviously can't be the truth. It just cannot be true that the 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour has twice as much energy as the ton train going 5 miles an hour. How can you believe that's true? That it has twice as much capacity. Again, if I put generators on the wheels of those trains, you really would bet. How much money would you bet? That would be the curious thing. How much would you be willing to bet? $10? I mean, how much confidence do you really have in this tripe that you keep pushing and pushing and pushing that I must believe it? I don't think you'd bet anything. I'd bet this house. I'd bet my life. I bet, everything. Because there's no way that nonsense is true. There's no experimental evidence demonstrating, and it's just on its face stupid. If I can destroy the energy of the train that easily, then I can create free energy by just, again, doing what I said. Just plow the 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour, just plow it into a spring and then replace it again with the 5-ton train, and I know I'm going to get all that free energy. Because the energy was still there. It never lost half its energy. The momentum was there. And the momentum is the energy. All right, so we'll try one more little bit here. I did notice a stupid comment on Piro's video that's probably worth it's probably worth just saying there's just another stupid argument. All right, here it is. So Blue Square, whatever that is, probably another one-day-old account. But anyway, worried about blowing his hands off with a pipe gun. It's called the zip gun, but whatever. But thinks it only takes 2 joules, 2 claps of the hand, to launch a bullet. Well, if the bullet is a dime, okay, a dime is lighter than a standard 22, so it's a very small bullet. All right, and yes, so a very small bullet can be launched with that much energy. Yes, I do think that's possible. And if I convert that clap into a little object with mass and I direct all that energy into one tiny location, yes. Okay. The hunting sites, so we're not going to get a link. It's just a vague reference to nothing. Say it takes 100 foot-pounds, 2,000 joules. So, they say, based on the kinetic energy formula. They don't say because they have any evidence for it. And so if that were true, then if you turn it around and give the 2-liter bottle the same 2,000 joules worth of energy, Well, now it's going 22 miles an hour. And it probably could knock your head right off your shoulders. So do you think a 2-liter bottle going 22 miles an hour is the same energy as a tiny little dime going 1,000 miles an hour? I mean, realistically, you really think so? If you were going to, invest in, you were an electric company and you had to derive energy from some source to, to give to your customers, and you wanted to be more economic, okay, you'd go with the dime going 1,000 miles an hour instead of the 2-liter bottle going 22 miles an hour. You'd be dumb enough to think those two things are equal. I mean, if I gave you a huge subsidy, I gave you the energy from the 2-liter bottle for half price. Yeah, it's only it's half price. You'd still choose the dime. Because you're stupid. Yes, you're stupid. No, the 2-liter bottle, the 5-pound bottle going 1 mile an hour is the same energy as the dime going 1,000. And I'm just saying a joule. I'm just saying realistically, a quarter stick of butter falling a meter. I can feel that. It's not like it's a small amount of energy. Anyway, and then you have to do the, it comes out to 2 joules. I mean, it's 2 kilograms times 1 mile an hour, which is 1/2 meter per second. So 2 kilograms times 1/2 ends up being 1. And then 1 times my conversion number, which is 2.3, gets you 2.3 joules. So yeah, 2.3 joules is what will put a dime going 1,000 miles an hour. Yeah. All right, and they calculate the explosive charge based on that. And again, do you think that's realistic, that there's 2,000 joules of energy inside that little tiny amount of gunpowder? You think so? I mean, 2,000 is a lot of joules. 2 kilojoules. It's a lot of joules. All right. Based on that, does he now want to take the chemist? So these aren't chemists. I'm sorry. I mean, we already know the formula is crap. I'm just saying that, you showing me smart people doing dumb things with a stupid formula isn't proof that that's what the chemistry says and that it makes any sense. Again, if we just use your rule and say there's 2,000 joules in the 2-liter bottle, well, the 2-liter bottle has to go 22 miles an hour, not 1 mile an hour then. So you're okay with the 22 mile an hour, 5 pounds going 22 miles an hour, and you think that's the same amount of energy as a dime going 1,000. A dime. I'll just call you too stupid, right? Okay. And say you know how much chemical energy is in the gunpowder. So again, showing people using the wrong formula does not prove the formula right. I'm sorry, you have to do a little better than that. And you're not doing that better. Do you really think that tiny amount of gunpowder, just realistically, do you think the tiny amount of gunpowder it takes to in a gun, to shoot a bullet, do you really think that tiny amount could make 2 kilograms go 22 miles an hour? You think it has any hope of doing that? No, the only hope it has is to make it go 1 mile an hour. Shit. Alright, so then Piro says, one thing I've been able to prove is Gary is the biggest asshole ever. Whatever. Complains about so he's going on with the personal crap again. Complains about a parent letting him play with fireworks and says that parent is like me. Yeah, I'm saying the word reckless I used. Okay, stupid and reckless. Bad example, lots of words I could have used, but I did use the reckless word a lot. Okay, which is a slander. That is not the kind of parent I was. You drank in front of your kids, right? No doubt you came home drunk. You go to your pool the night and you do your this and that. Plenty of times coming home drunk. So that's showing a good example. I was the opposite. I was the parent that made sure the kids were safe around fireworks and did the dangerous stuff myself. So you're just pointing out that you played with fireworks in front of your kids. Like that's a great thing to do. Let's have entertainments that are gratuitously and pointlessly dangerous. Not only being a huge waste of energy and resources and all that stuff, I mean, just a huge obscenity to the planet you're supposed to love as a shaman. You clearly hate it, okay, if that's the thing you're doing. But you don't understand it's monkey see, monkey do on this planet. That a parent's first obligation is to avoid doing anything stupid because their kids are going to do the same stupid stuff. So, you learned by what? You provided a very poor example of how to get through life. That would be my argument. A dangerous example. He's he's fascinating because he is the evidence for just how stupid emotional problems can make a smart man. So again, he keeps saying the same insult over and over again, like as if it has some relevance when clearly it doesn't. So if I have vertigo, he says that means you can't make logical arguments. That's his offensive statement, is that vertigo is an emotional problem and therefore you're irrational and can't interact with people by the rules. Just an absolute pile of shit as a theory, and clearly insulting as a tactic. Clearly petty and small-minded as a tactic. Okay. Let's see what he says here. By the midpoint in most people's lives, they have experienced enough tragedy to realize that living comes with this weight. Oh, no, what they should be realizing is that, everything they do can fuck somebody up. And this whole game is impossible to play well. You just can't make enough. You can't calculate all the permutations. And you can't know, that your good intentions will pave the road to hell for other people. You will actually put grease on the slide for them to go right into hell. That's what people should be learning here. That Piro's good intentions, I'm going to try to be a super dad. I'm going to have it all and give it all. Yeah, I'm going to give 100% while I take 100%. Yeah, fuck you. Yeah, that ain't going to work. I'm going to be happy and do my job. No, that ain't going to work. So this bless. So we already know this blue square guy is got his brain in some sort of totem pole's ass. Bless those happy wanderers that make it through and still as light as a feather. La 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 la. Blessed are the reckless poor and the stupid ignorant cunts. Blessed are the crack whore moms. Fuck you. Really. Ooh. For the rest of us, hopefully understanding and open heart will sustain. Oh, just such love. Oh, sorry, this is turning into some other kind of video. Gary is still lost in the woods of his own and the world's pain. Oh, well, that's probably a very insightful thing to be doing, is to recognizing that the pain is a problem and we ought to reduce that. Unfortunately, in his life, we have passed him by before he can see the value of it. Unfortunately, his life. So again, just so silly, because I'm perfectly actualized. And the truth is going to be is that you're going to be on the ash heap of wasted time, jackass. And it's going to be worse than wasted time, because you wasted your time in a Nazi uniform. I mean, you wasted your time doing something really, really destructive, okay, in terms of your capacity to cause harm. This little pro-life, little la-la dance you're doing for the man and the Borg, and the institutions, just makes you a hopelessly stupid and dangerous pile of babbling matter. Hopefully some of his ideas about education, graceful ethical treatment of animals, etc. will be popularized, and that can only be a good for the world. Well, I don't know how you can understand any of that if you're doing this. Blessed are the assholes who don't pay attention. I mean, what's the point of you saying, oh, it'd be really nice if we could persuade somebody to do all these efficiency things and to take charge and fix things. But blessed are the people who don't fix things. I mean, you're too stupid. Oh, the way he actually interacts with others will tell a different story than his philosophy. Blah, 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 blah. I don't interact in any negative way whatsoever until somebody sits there and just continually shits on my head. Then there's a point where I say, fuck this. I'm not here. I'm not a toilet bowl. Fuck you for treating me like one. Fuck you for typing this crap, okay, on somebody else's video. You pile of shit. Okay. I mean, more. I worry that the longer he goes on with this delusion, the more catastrophic his unraveling will be. There's no indication of unraveling. I've been doing this channel for like almost 10 years now. This one. The other one's already 10 years before that. You fucking idiot. Where the fuck is there any endurance indication? I lack fucking endurance. I lack the knowledge that I do have to endeavor to persevere because you are all so fucking goddamn stupid. And it has to be said over and over and over again. I have to keep trying to explain it to these fucking 4-year-olds that keep, well, where's Santa Claus in the story? Where the Teletubbies says... Teletubbies say... Yeah, it's an obnoxious task. And having to, and I have to overcome all of this gooey little bullshit that you jackasses type on other people's videos. All this maligning mush talk. Hopefully the reality has already dawned on him, and this act is all just a face-saving exercise. How the fuck do you face save by doubling down? I mean, I'm only offering $2,000, right? Somebody contributed another $100, so I could say $2,100. $2,100 to be debunked. That's face-saving? Fuck you. I mean, all of you little Weasley shit talkers. Oh, it's so fucking annoying. Yeah. I cleanse my hands with some jewels of energy of you. Okay. Idiots. Alright, so that's probably enough. Yeah, so we had a little bit of an experiment in there. I thought there was some other thing that provided a tiny bit of insight, but I'm not sure. Yeah, so we're just looking more for... Again, the Quora thing is just so funny that anything that, is getting to the point that energy is weight. It's a mass moving. That's weight. They just run. They can't answer the simple question. Just evade the fact that we all know from experience, right? I mean, in the old days anyway, we all knew. Before digital scales, you could watch the spring bouncing. You knew that if you jump on the scale, it's going to say 400 pounds. You know that. It does read the momentum. It actually does read the initial impulse. And, so we can just weigh energy. And physics wants to run away from that. And why does it want to run away from that? Because, then they can't play this magical energy game anymore. Because then we can all just say you can measure it with a scale. Anyway. Ugh. Shit. Yeah. I can just reason with people. Can't do anything else, right? There's just no other way to do this. I mean, I could put on a clown suit and I could try to be your friends. I could all, I can see Bobby and Sally and, oh, you're all so cute and you're all so wonderful. I could, But, I could do that, but I can't do it. Okay? Because it's just too, it's too degrading. It's too humiliating to admit I'm one of you humans. And I have to accept that I actually have to stoop this low to communicate with you. I mean, to have to do that, to have to acknowledge just how awful it is here, it's just too much for me. I can't take it. I can't take that truth being a fact, that I would actually have to, put on the Barney the dinosaur suit because you're that stupid. Ugh, it's just horrible. Yeah. Anyway, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot.